Back to the day my sister and I entered the palace for the imperial selection. She snatched the plum blossom silver hairpin from my head and placed it on hers. She trembled with excitement, murmuring incessantly, "Wonderful. This lifetime. It's my turn to be the emperor's consort." In my previous life, during the palace selection, a butterfly alighted upon my plum blossom hairpin, a sign of good fortune. The Empress Dowager specially permitted me to enter the palace as an attendant. She looked at me with utter contempt and declared, "From now on, we belong to two different worlds." I smiled without reply. Why was she still so foolish after reincarnating? The consorts selected this time were all destined to die. The moment I opened my eyes, I felt my hair being yanked painfully. I instinctively prepared to snap a harsh rebuke, only to be interrupted by a familiar voice. "How wonderful! This lifetime. It's my turn to be the empress. Now I get to enjoy all the splendor and wealth." Hearing those words, my breath caught, and I finally focused on the scene before me. There stood my sister, Song Qingqing, clutching my plum blossom silver hairpin with palpable excitement. In that instant, I knew. I had reincarnated back to the very day Song Qingqing and I entered the palace for the imperial selection. Seeing me staring blankly at the hairpin, Song Qingqing quickly clutched it tightly to her chest before glaring at me fiercely. "What are you looking at? It's mine now." I gathered my thoughts, shook my head, and smiled indifferently. "Since you like it, little sister, I'll give it to you." Song Qingqing beamed inwardly, though her expression remained neutral, conveying only a look of good riddance. But as she turned away, I caught her mutter under her breath, "How foolish. This blessing should be mine." Then she hurried off to join the selection procession. I stood rooted to the spot, watching her retreating figure, my thoughts churning. In my previous life, Song Qingqing and I had also participated in the selection together. However, neither our family background nor our looks were remarkable, so neither of us was chosen. Yet, as the selection concluded, a butterfly alighted upon my plum blossom silver hairpin. The Empress Dowager deemed it an auspicious sign and made an exception, allowing me to remain. Song Qingqing, however, was sent to the Imperial Household Department along with the other unsuccessful candidates, destined to become a palace maid. I knew Song Qingqing would be jealous, but I never imagined she would dare to kill me. The final moments before death flashed before my eyes. Song Qingqing's face twisted into a hideous grimace, and the excruciating pain of the dagger piercing my heart made my breathing grow ragged. "Why are you a consort while I'm just a palace maid? How dare you, you wretch, have such fortune? You deserve to die. Only then can I become the emperor's woman." Those shrieking words still echo in my ears. Watching Song Qingqing in the distance, already excitedly adorning herself with a plum blossom silver hairpin, a smirk curling her lips, my sister has been reborn too. Does she truly believe the status of the emperor's woman is so enviable? I hope she won't regret it once she learns the truth. Today's selection ceremony was presided over by the Empress Dowager and the Empress. Following the other candidates, I entered the front hall and immediately spotted the woman seated at the foremost position. Clad in a phoenix robe, none other than the current empress, Lu Suyu. My hands clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms as I struggled to suppress my hatred. Everyone knew Lu Suyu, as the head of the harem and the legitimate daughter of General Lu, was dignified and noble, the epitome of a court lady. Yet few realized she was a wolf in sheep's clothing, her hands stained with countless blood debts. My hand instinctively brushed my belly. In my past life, my poor child had been killed by Lu Suyu. I still remember clearly, I had just given birth to the young prince. Before I could even catch a glimpse of him, Lu Suyu had her men seal off the courtyard. Then, right before my eyes, she clamped her hands around the infant prince's throat. My poor child hadn't even opened his eyes yet, but he clenched his tiny fists and struggled desperately. Mother and child share a bond, he wanted to live. And my heart was torn apart. I wanted to rush forward and fight Lu Suyu to the death. But two wet nurses pinned me down on the bed. I screamed, begging Lu Suyu to spare my child. But she paid me no heed. Only when the little prince's tiny fists went limp and his body turned purple in Lu Suyu's arms did she turn her laughing gaze to me, sobbing until I was nearly fainting. My dear sister truly has no fortune. You bore a little prince. Yet he was stillborn. Ha ha ha. I glared viciously at this mortal enemy before me, cursing her with the most venomous words I could muster. Just then, Song Qingqing stepped out from behind Lu Suyu. Before I could react, Song Qingqing drew a dagger and plunged it deep into my heart. As I drew my last breath, she whispered, "The Empress has promised me, kill you. And she'll make me the Emperor's favorite concubine. Dear sister, with me as your blood sister bearing witness, no one will question that you and your son died in childbirth. Trading your worthless lives for my lifetime of luxury, you should rest in peace now. In my past life, Song Qingqing was foolish, willingly serving as Lu Suyu's tool. Song Qingqing deserved to die, but Lu Suyu deserved it even more. Only my child was pitiful, I never got to properly see him before I died." I turned to look at Song Qingqing beside me. Curiosity stirred, if I had been reborn after death. Did that mean she had died too? After all, if I were Lu Suyu, I would have silenced her as well. Sure enough, Song Qingqing's face darkened. She glared at Lu Suyu, her eyes brimming with hatred. I chuckled softly. This was entertaining. I relished watching dogs fight among themselves. The selection process raged on. Unsurprisingly, Song Qingqing and I once again failed to catch the eyes of Lu Suyu or the Empress Dowager, falling short yet again. Just then, a butterfly drifted slowly toward us, circling above our heads like it had in my past life. Song Qingqing stared fixedly at the butterfly suspended in midair. Sitting close, I could see her body trembling slightly with tension. Finally, perhaps weary from its flight, the butterfly settled upon the plum blossom silver hairpin in Song Qingqing's hair. Responding to her pleading gaze, Song Qingqing held her breath, afraid to disturb the butterfly. How amusing! The Empress Dowager, seated at the head, chuckled softly. Lu Suyu was a master at reading people. Knowing the Empress Dowager was devout and placed great importance on fate, she understood that the Empress Dowager's words meant she intended to keep this candidate. She glanced at Song Qingqing, noting her average looks, and felt reassured. Following the Empress Dowager's lead, she said, "A beauty favored by butterflies. Surely His Majesty would also find her pleasing." The Empress Dowager nodded slightly. "You are the Empress. Your decision is final." Lu Suyu turned to the eunuch recording the proceedings for the Imperial Household Department. "Keep this beauty as well." Song Qingqing immediately knelt. This servant. Thanks the Empress Dowager for her grace. Thanks the Empress for her grace." Her voice trembled with emotion. The Empress Dowager, who valued propriety above all, frowned slightly at Song Qingqing's overly dramatic display. In contrast, the smile on Lu Suyu's face deepened. To her, the more incompetent the consorts in the harem were, the more at ease she felt. After the selection, the Empress Dowager and Lu Suyu departed immediately. Eunuchs from the Imperial Household Department then approached to assign paths for all the rejected candidates. Daughters from families of officials ranked 3rd grade or above could return home to arrange their own marriages. Those from families of officials below 3rd grade would enter the palace as palace maids. Of course, they weren't destined for menial tasks, at the very least. They would be second-class palace maids. Song Qingqing stepped before me, her tone haughty and commanding. "From this day forward, our statuses are worlds apart. One is a mistress, the other, a servant. Now, kneel and pay your respects to me. Perhaps I might deign to show mercy and allow you to serve by my side." I bowed slightly. This servant need not trouble the young mistress. I have my own place to go. My use of this servant and young mistress clearly pleased Song Qingqing. She laughed with smug satisfaction. You know your place. Given your lowly status, don't tell anyone in the palace about our relationship. I find it unlucky. With that, Song Qingqing strode away triumphantly. I watched her retreating figure, a cold smile playing on my lips. How smug she was now, just wait until she learned the truth. Though the current emperor was in the prime of his life, he had suffered from a congenital weakness since birth, leaving his health perpetually fragile. He now requires daily doses of century-old ginseng broth to sustain his vitality, which is why he did not attend today's imperial selection. This matter remains unknown to the public, concealed to prevent popular panic and foreign ambitions. Only the emperor's closest consorts and personal attendants are privy to the truth. All assume His Majesty's absence stems from relentless state affairs. But in reality, it is his failing spirit. This year, his health has deteriorated further. Had the crown prince not been so young, the emperor might have already issued an edict to pass the throne. Today's selection ceremony was also intended to ward off misfortune. Thus, upon witnessing the auspicious sign of the butterfly selecting candidates, the Empress Dowager specifically retained Song Qingqing even though the Empress Dowager disapproved of her etiquette. In my previous life, I too learned of this truth only during a night of imperial attendance. Yet the emperor had strictly forbidden its disclosure, threatening extermination of 9 clans for any breach. In our dynasty, when the emperor passed without an heir, all consorts were required to commit suicide in his honor. With the emperor's inability to conceive an heir, achieving imperial succession was as difficult as scaling the heavens. Thus, the young ladies selected today have effectively placed one foot in the gates of death. In my previous life, it was sheer luck that I managed to conceive the imperial heir. Song Qingqing is practically throwing herself at the emperor. It's no different from courting death. As I watched the eunuch from the imperial household department holding the records to assign palace quarters, I pulled out every last coin from my possession and pressed them into the hand of the eunuch in charge of assignments. Your Excellency, I have a favor to ask. The eunuch weighed the pouch in his hand, his face breaking into a broad smile. A sensible one. Which palace would you like to serve in? I replied softly. I've heard Lady Consort Shu is kind-hearted. I wish to serve in her quarters. The eunuch paused slightly, then glanced at me uncertainly. Are you certain about Lady Consort Shu's quarters? I nodded firmly. I knew why he asked, because Lady Consort Shu's brocade palace was no easy place. It wasn't that Consort Shu had a terrible temper and was difficult to serve, quite the opposite. In fact, she was the most temperate mistress in the palace, and every servant who attended her spoke highly of her. Unlike other mistresses who would strike or scold servants at the slightest provocation, Consort Shu treated her servants with genuine respect. But the biggest problem with Lady Shu's quarters was that Empress Lu Suyu detested her most. Lady Shu also didn't know how to curry favor with the emperor. Rumor had it she constantly quarreled with him, even declaring she accepted only monogamy. Though she had a son and a daughter, she was despised by the emperor. Now, Lady Shu's brocade palace was no different from the Cold Palace. Perhaps it was even worse than the Cold Palace. After all, once confined there, Empress Lu Suyu wouldn't bother to cause trouble for the exiled. Yet within Consort Shu's brocade palace, the empress would find reasons to cause trouble every other day. Consort Shu's family background was no less distinguished than the empress's, so the empress couldn't openly harm her. Instead, she would publicly punish the servants within Consort Shu's palace. Thus, every servant in the palace knows that the most perilous place is Consort Shu's brocade palace. Yet while others may shun brocade palace, I know it holds my greatest hope for vengeance. After all, Consort Shu is the only one capable of bringing down Empress Lu Suyu. Others claimed the emperor had grown weary of Consort Shu, which was why he avoided the brocade palace. But I knew the truth. In his sleep, The emperor would call out Consort Shu's maiden name. And it wasn't that he shunned the brocade palace, Consort Shu simply refused to let him enter. My silver played a significant role. The eunuch from the Imperial Household Department personally escorted me to serve Princess Lingyun at the Palace of Brocade Splendor. Consort Shu had a son and a daughter, the second prince and Princess Lingyun. Serving by Princess Lingyun's side suited me perfectly. I recall that in my previous life. Just 5 days after entering the palace, I heard rumors that the Hezha tribe beyond the frontier sought a marriage alliance with the Great Liang. The Empress proposed sending Princess Lingyun as a peace offering. When the Emperor dispatched envoys to invite Consort Shu and Princess Lingyun for discussions, the princess refused and fled. While being pursued by palace maids and eunuchs, she collided with an artificial hill, striking her head and becoming mentally impaired. This incident became Consort Shu's eternal sorrow. In my previous life, whenever I visited the Brocade Palace, I would always see Consort Shu silently weeping before the mentally impaired Princess Lingyun. If I could prevent this tragedy in this lifetime, perhaps I could earn her favor and enlist her aid in my quest for vengeance. Princess Lingyun is 14 now, attended by personal maids and wet nurses. As a second-class palace maid, I lack the privilege to serve her directly and must attend to her needs in the outer courtyard. These days serving in the Brocade Palace have broadened my horizons. In my previous life, I might not have seen the Emperor even once in half a month. Yet now I encounter him daily. He almost always came in the evening, but Consort Shu would simply order the servants to lock the door from the inside, paying him no mind whatsoever. The servants of the Brocade Palace had grown accustomed to this scene, each continuing with their own tasks. The Emperor didn't press the matter. Each time, he would stand outside for a quarter of an hour before leaving, day after day. Occasionally, the Emperor would call out from beyond the courtyard, "Waner, just open the door and see your Emperor." The noble consort would invariably reply in her measured tone, "Your display of deep affection is well staged. But I'm not swayed by such tactics. When you pass away, I'll attend your funeral banquet." I listened in amazement. Consort Shu truly possessed both skill and audacity. Yet the Emperor never grew angry, he simply turned away when rebuffed. Now I understood why Empress Lu Suyu constantly sought to trouble Consort Shu. Such favor would make anyone green with envy. But the more this happened, the more confident I felt. For my chance for revenge grew ever brighter. I had been reborn. But rebirth didn't make me invincible. Nor did it make Lu Suyu any less cunning or powerful. To exact my vengeance, I needed outside support. On the 5th day, Lu Suyu arrived at the Brocade Palace, just as she had in my previous life. Spotting the noble consort, Lu Suyu smiled. "I've come to bother you today, sister." The noble consort shot Lu Suyu a glance. Offering no curtsy as she replied coolly, "Spit it out if you have something to say. Then get out. I stewed pork knuckles today and don't want you ruining my appetite." Her tone held a mocking smile, while Lu Suyu's face darkened. I listened with satisfaction from the doorway. Lu Suyu suppressed her rage and said calmly, "My dear sister, you may not know this yet, but a memorial just arrived from the Hezha tribe. Their prince wishes to marry Princess Lingyun, and His Majesty has already granted permission. I hear the Hezha practice brotherly wife-sharing, brothers can exchange wives. The Khan has 17 or 18 sons. Princess Lingyun is truly blessed." The noble consort remained unmoved, merely casting a dismissive glance at Lu Suyu. "I've heard enough. You may leave." Lu Suyu, however, smiled, "No need for pretense. I've come to invite Princess Lingyun to the imperial study. Please summon her now." Hearing this outside the door, I knew my moment had come. I slipped back into the inner courtyard. The second prince was still studying in the study chamber, so only Princess Lingyun remained there. As soon as I entered, I saw the princess swinging happily on the swing. Approaching her, I curtsied and said, "Princess, The Huzha tribe has petitioned to marry you. His Majesty has granted permission. The Empress is coming with attendants to escort you to the imperial study to discuss this matter." Princess Lingyun's expression shifted slightly as she looked at me. What did my mother say? Recalling Consort Shu's expression, I replied uncertainly. Consort Shu seemed unconcerned. "But the Empress is determined to take you to the imperial study." Princess Lingyun snorted lightly. "This princess shall see just how determined the Empress is." With that, Princess Lingyun started toward the front courtyard. I grew anxious. If she truly clashed with the Empress, there was no guarantee the events of my past life wouldn't repeat. Forgetting propriety, I grabbed Princess Lingyun's arm. "Princess, please don't act rashly. The Emperor has already issued his decree. Going now would only lead to disadvantage. I have a plan." Half an hour later, the entire palace buzzed with one story. Princess Lingyun, upon learning of her arranged marriage, had thrown a fit, smashing her head against a pillar until blood gushed uncontrollably. The imperial physician barely saved her life, but the princess was left mentally impaired. Consort Shu, consumed by maternal love, erupted in fury, driving the Empress out of the brocade palace. With the princess incapacitated, a new bride must be chosen for the alliance. Meanwhile, within the brocade palace, I knelt before Consort Shu. Princess Lingyun sat beside me, unharmed. Consort Shu held her tea, her gaze fixed on me as she uttered two words, "Your purpose." I looked at the bandaged wound on my wrist, yet my mind replayed the horrifying scene of the young prince's death from my past life. Earlier, I had stopped the princess, instructing her to feign colliding with the pillar. I had slit my own wrist, using my blood to fabricate evidence for her. As for the imperial physician, the princess had arranged for the second prince to find him, a person placed within the palace by the Consort Shu's maternal family. Everything I had done was for this very moment. Taking a deep breath to steel my resolve, I spoke directly. "This servant begs Consort Shu to help this servant kill the Empress." I spoke so frankly because the Empress and Consort Shu were never on good terms. Even if she refused to help me, she wouldn't betray me to the Empress. Consort Shu smiled upon hearing my words and said, "Why should I help you?" I quickly replied, "Your Highness, this would also benefit yourself." But Consort Shu shook her head. "As long as I remain within the brocade palace, Lu Suyu cannot touch me." My heart sank slightly, knowing the noble consort spoke truth. After pondering for a moment, I spoke again. "This servant has been reborn. In my previous life, Princess Lingyun truly became a simpleton after fleeing an arranged marriage. The Empress later targeted the second prince, who faced assassins multiple times, sustaining severe injuries that nearly killed him. If the Empress is not removed, Your Highness will also face hardship." Though rebirth felt utterly improbable, I had no other recourse. I had indeed returned, but in my past life, I was merely a lowly beauty, powerless and without influence. Knowing scarcely any palace secrets, whether by family background or ruthlessness, I stood no chance. Avenge myself now? It was as difficult as scaling the heavens. Consort Shu was my only hope. When I mentioned rebirth, Princess Lingyun looked utterly incredulous. In contrast, Consort Shu's eyes lit up. She abruptly rose, approached me, and scrutinized me closely. "What proof do you have?" I froze. Surprised Consort Shu believed me. But how could rebirth be proven? All I remembered were trivial matters. No, wait. I recalled that in 1 month, the second prince would be assassinated. I looked at Consort Shu. In a month, the second prince will be assassinated. Consort Shu smiled and shook her head, setting aside that Hauer faces assassination attempts constantly. Even if he is attacked in a month, who's to say you didn't orchestrate it? Her words left me speechless. The noble consort looked at me. "Since you chose to tell me about your rebirth, It must be because of something I did to you in your past life. Was there anything I said or did to you back then? I fell deep in thought. In my past life. On the night I attended the emperor. I heard him mutter the noble consort's name in his sleep. I realized the emperor truly cherished her. Which is why I began spending time with the noble consort afterward. At first, consort Shu ignored me. Later, perhaps finding me bothersome, she taught me to mimic her mannerisms. This tactic proved effective. The emperor took an interest in me and frequently summoned me to his bedchamber. Soon, I bore him a child, giving me hope for survival. After all, the emperor's health was fragile. Should he pass away, a concubine without an heir would be required to commit suicide as a sacrificial offering. Suddenly, a name surfaced in my mind. I recalled consort Shu mentioning it when we first met, a name I had once searched for in vain within the palace walls. I looked at consort Shu and slowly uttered 3 words, Enlingrong. Consort Shu's eyes widened. Then she burst into laughter. Who would have thought? After all these years of time travel, I'd never meet a fellow countrywoman. Yet I encounter a reborn woman instead. How amusing. I was baffled, unsure what magic this name held that made consort Shu trust me. She laughed for a long while before turning to me. So in your past life, it was you who wore the hairpin that drew the butterfly, leading you into the palace? I nodded, though I didn't know how consort Shu knew these things. It was indeed true. So the day you reincarnated was the 4th day of the 3rd month next year? The consort Shu inquired again. I nodded once more. This time, the smile on the consort Shu's face deepened. She pulled me up. Today is a joyous occasion. Though we're not fellow villagers, encountering a reincarnated woman is a rare delight. Stay and drink a few cups with me. Wine and dishes were swiftly brought in. The noble consort insisted on making me drink, while the second prince and Princess Lingyun watched me with curiosity. But my mind was entirely elsewhere. Seeing the consort in good spirits, I spoke again. This servant desires nothing more than for your highness to avenge me and my poor child. Once vengeance is served, whatever task you assign, this servant shall perform without complaint. The consort poured me wine and smiled at me. Why do you think I have the power to avenge you? I thought for a moment before speaking. Because the emperor favors you. With his majesty's favor, combined with your noble lineage, dealing with the empress would be as easy as turning your hand. The consort set down the wine jug, the smile vanishing completely from her face. She spoke softly. Little one, sometimes what you see isn't necessarily the truth. You must have heard why I entered the palace, right? I nodded. In my past life, I'd inquired about consort Shu and knew the story well. It was said the emperor, drunk, had an affair with consort Shu. To take responsibility for his folly, he defied the empress's opposition and brought consort Shu into the palace. Everyone said his majesty was a true man, brave enough to take responsibility. But after entering the palace, consort Shu remained locked away in the brocade palace. Consort Shu sneered coldly. Can a man truly perform such acts when genuinely drunk? That thing probably couldn't even get hard. He merely forced himself on me under the influence of alcohol, then tried to make amends afterward. To get me into the palace, he even threatened my family. Would such a man ever love me? My father is the Grand Tutor, the foremost scholar official. Lu Suyu's father is General Lu, the foremost military commander. The emperor wants me in the palace only to pit me against Lu Suyu, sow discord between scholars and generals, and thus control the court. Love? What love? The consort's words were shocking. I instinctively wanted to cover my ears, unable to bear hearing these secrets. But the consort paid no heed, continuing to speak as if to herself. Day after day, he puts on a show of deep affection outside the courtyard, knowing full well the empress will be jealous and will cause me trouble over it. Why does he still come every day? Today, He even considered arranging a marriage alliance for Lingyun. Does he truly want an alliance? All this is just him forcing me to bow. Forcing me to beg. Forcing me to admit defeat. How could such a man possibly love me? Her words left me speechless. The noble consort downed several cups in quick succession, and I could sense she was growing tipsy. Yet her spirits remained high as she continued, "Little one, let me tell you a story. A woman's story." Without waiting for my response, she launched into the tale. In a distant land where men and women were equal, where women could study and take the imperial examinations, where women could run their own households, there lived a girl. She excelled in her studies, had loving parents and friends, and held a good job. Yet due to certain circumstances, she was exiled to a backward place. It was a place of ignorance and backwardness. They forced the girl to marry a man. She refused, so he took her by force. Fearing she might flee, they locked her away. To keep her there, they made her pregnant and forced her to bear a child, utterly disregarding her wishes. They pleaded with her, for the child's sake, a child cannot be without a mother. They shackled her body with chains, bound her soul with the umbilical cord. At this point, Consort Shu gazed at me through drunkenly blurred eyes. "Do you think the girl should flee this place?" she asked. "Or should she learn to love that man?" I was momentarily speechless, unable to respond. The noble consort chuckled. "I used to read those illustrated books where the heroine gets drugged and forced by the male lead from the start. Then bears him 1, 2, 3 sons, all boys. Afterward, she falls hopelessly in love with him. Ha ha ha. How ridiculous! Would anyone truly love a rapist? To bear a little villain for a villain, yet make the woman abandon everything for that little villain, how utterly absurd." My heart pounded as I glanced at the second prince and Princess Lingyun beside us, only to find they seemed utterly unfazed. The second prince merely muttered, "Me and Lingyun aren't little villains." Hearing this, Consort Shu chuckled and pinched the second prince's cheek. "You and Lingyun still have a shred of conscience. Your mother's words were a bit inappropriate." Though Consort Shu smiled, I sensed tears behind it, and my heart clenched painfully. "Your Highness, you're drunk. Let me escort you to rest." As I stepped forward to support her, Consort Shu waved me off. "Girl, I'll say this once. Listen carefully. Not a single soul in this palace is simple. Do you truly believe the emperor is on his deathbed?" At this, Consort Shu snorted derisively. "A man truly nearing death could father 2 children with me, produce a crown prince with the empress, and even cause you to conceive in your previous life? And he'd let you know he was dying? He's nothing but a scheming old bastard." Her words were a curse, though I didn't grasp their meaning, only that they were an insult. Did you think the Empress Dowager became the palace's ultimate manipulator by accident? Did you believe her and Lu Suyu were blind to your butterfly-luring hairpin trick? They simply found you easy to control, so they let you enter the palace. You think I'm a good person? How laughable. Are there any good people in this palace? When I had you imitate me in my past life, it was likely just to divert the Empress's attention. The noble consort rose slowly, staggering toward the sleeping chamber. Her voice drifted back, "For the sake of your rebirth, I'll teach you one thing, go with the flow." With that, Consort Shu entered her chambers. I stood frozen in place. The second prince approached me and spoke calmly, "In your past life, who ultimately ascended the throne?" I snapped back to reality. "When I passed away, the emperor had not yet designated an heir." The second prince said nothing, merely nodded before departing. Princess Lingyun, clearly uneasy about Lady Shu, hurried after him. I remained standing there for a very long time, each word Lady Shu had spoken replaying in my mind. The next day, Lady Shu resumed her usual demeanor. She didn't spare me a second glance, as if yesterday had been an illusion. I didn't mind. I was already deeply grateful that Lady Shu had reminded me of that matter. After a night of contemplation, I found inspiration in Consort Shu's words. The Empress's vengeance could wait, but Song Qingqing's could be dealt with first. So early that morning, I prepared some pastries and went to Song Qingqing's Qixiang Hall. Seeing the trembling eunuch guarding the door, I knew Song Qingqing was undoubtedly in a foul mood. After all, on her second day in the palace, Song Qingqing was to attend the emperor's bedchamber. Having done so, she must now know the emperor's true condition, a death sentence. No wonder she was furious. Of course, Consort Shu was right, the emperor's illness might be feigned. But Song Qingqing wouldn't know that. I approached the guarding eunuch and said, "This servant attends in the brocade palace and is acquainted with Lady Song. Might I trouble you to announce my arrival?" As I spoke, I slipped a silver ingot into his hand. The eunuch nodded and scurried inside. Moments later, he emerged. "Our Lady permits your entry." I thanked the young eunuch and stepped inside. A palace maid waited at the entrance and ushered me straight inside. As soon as I entered the garden, I saw Song Qingqing seated in the pavilion. I approached and knelt. "This servant greets Lady Song." Song Qingqing's eyes lit up upon seeing me. Observing my proper greeting, her face flushed with smug pride. Though her tone was sharp, "What brings you here?" I bowed my head submissively. "This servant wishes the beauty to transfer me out of the brocade palace." Song Qingqing immediately glared at me. "Who do you think you are? Do you think I can afford to offend Her Imperial Highness the noble consort?" Hearing her words, my suspicions were confirmed. The emperor truly was treacherous. In her previous life, Song Qingqing had been merely a palace maid, utterly unaware of the emperor's affection for Consort Shu. That she grasped this so swiftly in this lifetime pointed to only one possibility: the emperor had once again called Consort Shu's name in his dreams. Whether intentional or not, this development suited me perfectly. It spared me the trouble and facilitated my plans. Song Qingqing suddenly fixed her gaze on me. "Are you hiding some secret formula for bearing children?" Hearing this, my heart leapt with delight. Song Qingqing, desperate for a cure, was throwing herself at me without any prompting. Of course, this was precisely why I had come, to deliberately appear before her and remind her that I had conceived the imperial heir in my previous life. But now, I feigned confusion. This humble servant does not understand what the beauty means. Song Qingqing clearly had no patience for my nonsense. She rose abruptly and stepped before me. "Spit it out. Do you have some secret formula for conceiving? If you tell me honestly, I might take pity on you and help transfer you out of the brocade palace." I sneered inwardly. Song Qingqing really thought she could fool me. I truly don't know, but elders say that frequent intimacy will surely lead to conception. I replied, feigning coyness. That was precisely my reasoning in my previous life. Since the emperor favored Consort Shu, I resolved to emulate her ways. His affection would surely follow, and his visits would become more frequent. Sure enough, Song Qingqing's expression shifted as if she just understood something. She frowned, paced in place, then spoke after a long moment. "There's something I need you to do." I asked, "What is it?" "Observe Consort Shu closely in the brocade palace. Memorize every nuance of her expression, her favorite garments, her makeup. Report every detail to me. Once I conceive an heir, I'll have you transferred out of the brocade palace." Song Qingqing's tone was condescending. My heart leapt with joy. Through my intervention, Song Qingqing was indeed following the script of my past life. Then the drama of her and Lu Suyu tearing each other apart shouldn't be far off. For the next month, I shuttled daily between the brocade palace and the Qixiang Hall. I reported every detail to Song Qingqing, the consort's preferred makeup styles, favorite fragrances, and the garments and jeweled hairpins she adored. Song Qingqing was a quick learner, soon capturing 3/10 of the consort's essence. Before long, Rumors spread throughout the harem that the emperor visited Shixiang Hall every other day, making Song Qingqing the hottest commodity in the palace. Naturally, I was the one spreading these rumors, all to let the one in Weiyang Palace know. But the one in Weiyang Palace remained unmoved. I wasn't worried about that. After all, Consort Shu was right. Lu Suyu thought Song Qingqing and I were easy to manipulate, which was why she brought us into the palace. Song Qingqing's temporary favor was still well within her control, so naturally, she wouldn't react. But if Song Qingqing were to conceive an imperial heir, that would be a different matter entirely. I patiently awaited that day. 3 months later, Song Qingqing was indeed pregnant. I breathed a deep sigh of relief. All this time, I'd been anxious, fearing she might never conceive. I'd even considered hinting to her about seeking a surrogate if necessary. Thankfully, it never came to that. After Song Qingqing's pregnancy, the atmosphere in the entire harem shifted noticeably. The secluded brocade palace, which rarely sent gifts, had unexpectedly presented her with offerings delivered personally by the second prince. I was puzzled, and Consort Shu offered no explanation. Yet within days, rumors spread throughout the harem. Consort Shu and the second prince sought to win over Song Qingqing and her unborn royal heir. This news stunned me for a long time. It seemed impossible. Consort Shu clearly looked down on Song Qingqing and would never court her favor. Noticing my confusion, Consort Shu smiled and said, "This move is for you. And for me." I didn't understand the reasoning behind it, but I knew Consort Shu was surely plotting against the empress. So I waited quietly. Half a month after the rumors spread, I had just left Shixiang Hall and was preparing to return to the brocade palace when a matron blocked my path. "A noble lady wishes to see you." I recognized this matron. In my past life, she and another matron had pinned me down on the bed. I knew she was the empress's woman. Following the matron to Weiyang Palace, I saw Lu Suyu. In that moment, the horrific death of the young prince flashed before my eyes. I wanted to lunge at Lu Suyu and fight her to the death, but I knew it would be futile. I forced myself to suppress that rage. I stepped forward to pay my respects. "May Her Majesty the Empress enjoy boundless fortune and everlasting peace." Lu Suyu said nothing, merely tossing an object at my feet. As I recognized it, my eyes narrowed slightly. It was the silver hairpin adorned with a begonia blossom that Song Qingqing had snatched from my hair that day. "This must be yours," she remarked softly. "Quite a clever trick, though a pity. I hear it was taken by the Song beauty, and with it, your fortune too," Lu Suyu murmured softly. My heart skipped a beat. Consort Shu's words had been true after all. My petty schemes had been seen through by both Lu Suyu and the Empress Dowager. I had smeared fragrant honey on that silver hairpin, and the butterfly was released near the selection venue by a eunuch I bribed. Otherwise, how could it be such a coincidence that in both lifetimes, the butterfly landed precisely on the silver hairpin? By speaking thus now, Lu Suyu was clearly implying that Song Qingqing had snatched my fortune, an attempt to sow discord. Perhaps in my past life, the Empress also hinted to Song Qingqing that I used tricks to be selected, making Song Qingqing jealous of me and then turning against me. But at this moment, my whole body trembled, looking like a secret had been uncovered, and even my voice became stuttered. I don't understand what the Empress is saying." Lu Suyu chuckled softly, her tone gentle yet tinged with allure. "Fear not. I am no villain. Serve me faithfully, and I shall make you the Emperor's favorite concubine. All your desires shall be fulfilled." I feigned surprise, lifting my head to gaze at Lu Suyu. At this, a fleeting look of contempt flashed in her eyes. "What does your Majesty require of this servant?" I asked, feigning unease. Lu Suyu smiled. "Report to me the whereabouts of Consort Shu and Consort Song. Once I've eliminated these two, I'll make you the Emperor's favorite concubine." I nodded repeatedly. This servant understands. Upon returning to the brocade palace, I intended to inform Consort Shu about the Empress's order to monitor her. But the second prince blocked my path. No need to seek out the Empress. She is already aware. Do as the Empress commands. Report back to me with updates every few days. The second prince handed me a letter as he spoke. I opened it and scanned its contents, breaking out in a cold sweat. The revelations within sent shivers down my spine. The second prince spoke calmly. Your enemies aren't just Song Qingqing and Lu Suyu. Song Qingqing is easy to eliminate, but Lu Suyu is far more difficult. She has the crown prince and General Lu backing her. As long as those two remain in power, Lu Suyu will stand as solid as a mountain. With that, the second prince turned and left. After he departed, I looked again at the letter in my hand. It contained a mix of true and false secrets. It revealed that Consort Shu and Song Qingqing had formed an alliance. Song Qingqing would support the second prince's ascension to the throne. And in return, the second prince promised her fiefdoms for any prince or princess she bore. I knew this part was fabricated. Yet other details seemed credible, like the second prince's casual conversation with Consort Shu, where he revealed the Grand Tutor had already contacted court officials to impeach General Lu for military arrogance, aiming to strip him of his command. This information felt genuine. Even as a lowly palace maid, I knew the Grand Tutor was capable of such schemes. At that moment, the words of the Consort Shu flashed through my mind, go with the flow. And then there was the second prince's remark about General Lu standing behind Lu Suyu. I pondered deeply. The next day, I shared part of the information the second prince had given me with Lu Suyu. At first, I only mentioned the collaboration between the Consort Shu and Song Qingqing. Lu Suyu remained dismissive. But when I later revealed the Grand Tutor and court officials' plot to jointly impeach General Lu, Lu Suyu lost her composure. Especially after receiving confirmation of this plot within days of my tip. She flew into a rage. Soon after, word spread that the Crown Prince had secretly rallied court officials, causing the Grand Tutor's impeachment effort to fizzle out. Lu Suyu was overjoyed for quite some time and rewarded me with a few gold coins. Later, under the second prince's arrangement, I deliberately leaked some information to Lu Suyu. The Crown Prince continued his old tricks, making early preparations each time to suppress the Grand Tutor. However, the Grand Tutor was, after all, the foremost scholar official. Even with the Crown Prince's advanced planning, he was repeatedly humiliated by the Grand Tutor, which greatly angered Lu Suyu. 3 more months passed before Lu Suyu suddenly regained her composure. This was because General Lu's son, Lu Suyu's younger brother, Lu Wu, had returned from the frontier to celebrate her birthday. I overheard this news while reporting to Lu Suyu in Weiyang Palace. Anxiety gripped me. With Lu Wu back, wouldn't Lu Suyu become even more formidable? Upon returning to the Brocade Palace, I relayed this news to Consort Shu and the second prince. To my surprise, both of them burst into laughter upon hearing it. Confused and bewildered, I stood there dumbfounded. The second prince snorted lightly. The Lius truly are a family of brutes. After years of arrogance and tyranny, they've grown bold enough to show no fear toward His Majesty. They dared to scheme against my sister. They shall pay the price. The Consort Shu didn't respond but turned to me. My dear, do you understand? My mind was in turmoil. Why would the Consort Shu and the second prince be so pleased by Lu Wu's return? Shouldn't they be worried? Seeing my puzzled expression, Consort Shu reminded me, you knew about Lu Wu's return before we did. It clicked instantly. If Consort Shu and the second prince didn't know, then neither did the Grand Tutor, and perhaps not even the Emperor himself. The Lu family's actions were a direct affront to the Emperor. Having held sway at the borderlands for so long, they'd grown complacent. Their armies swollen with power. Their sense of reverence eroded. It also instantly reminded me of what the noble consort had said that day. The Emperor was feigning illness. But for whom was he feigning it? I hadn't been able to figure it out all this time. But now I understood. The emperor was wary of the Lu family, feigning illness for their benefit. He had always been guarding against them. After all, the Lu family held military power, and the crown prince also carried half Lu blood. Earlier, the second prince mentioned the Lu family scheming against Princess Lingyun, which reminded me of the Hezha tribe's demand for a princess marriage alliance. With General Lu stationed at the border, the Hezha tribe is merely a minor tribe. Yet they dared to request a princess marriage alliance. This was clearly the Lu family deliberately encouraging such actions, showing the emperor that without the Lu family's defense, even a minor tribe would dare to demand a princess marriage alliance. Therefore, the emperor must have harbored dissatisfaction with the Lu family for a long time. Recently, the crown prince has been secretly contacting court officials, stirring up frequent disturbances. Now, Lu Wu has suddenly returned to the capital. The emperor, ever suspicious, will surely read too much into this. He might even take action against the Lu family. Shocked, I looked at Consort Shu. So all this was within Consort Shu and the second prince's calculations? Consort Shu seemed to read my thoughts. She smiled and said, "My dear, this is palace intrigue. Once the Lu family is dealt with, I can finally prepare to return home." At this point, Consort Shu turned to me. The emperor now lacks only a pretext to act against the Lu family. That pretext must come from you. I nodded in understanding. All that remained was waiting for Lu Wu's return. Sure enough, 10 days later, Lu Wu abruptly returned to the capital, startling the court officials into heated discussion. Lu Wu made a grand show of celebrating Lu Suyu's birthday, sending box after box of gifts to the Weiyang Palace, all priceless treasures. This was clearly meant to bolster Lu Suyu and the crown prince, while also intimidating the literati officials who sought to impeach the Lu family. The emperor hosted a banquet for Lu Wu, bestowed rewards upon him, and even praised the empress and crown prince in passing, making it seem as though the Lu family was at the height of its power. But I knew this was merely the Lu family's last gasp. With Lu Wu back in the capital and Lu Suyu now backed by powerful allies, I quietly made my way to Weiyang Palace. "Your Majesty, Consort Song is nearing her due date. The imperial physician has taken her pulse and confirmed she carries a prince. Should Consort Song give birth to a prince, Consort Shu's faction would hold 2 princes. The crown prince's position would be endangered." My words left Lu Suyu's face grim. She snorted coldly, "Only if it's born will it be a prince. If it doesn't make it, it's just a piece of rotten flesh." I knew Lu Wu's return had emboldened Lu Suyu. This so-called prince was merely the spark that ignited her audacity. If Lu Suyu dared to harm me in my previous life, she certainly wouldn't spare Song Qingqing, who was nominally allied with Consort Shu, in this lifetime. On the day Song Qingqing felt the baby move, Lu Suyu had already made preparations. She had Lu Wu enter the palace to discuss state affairs with the emperor. Tying him up, she sent the crown prince to the brocade palace to keep the consort Shu and the second prince occupied. Meanwhile, she brought me to the Qixing Hall. Just like in my previous life, the Qixing Hall was already filled with Lu Suyu's people, guarded tightly inside and out. Following Lu Suyu to the entrance of Qixing Hall, I heard Song Qingqing's agonized screams from within, punctuated by the midwife's soothing words. After nearly an hour of labor, a loud, clear infant's cry finally pierced the air. Lu Suyu gave a cold laugh and led her people inside. I followed behind her, hiding in the shadows. I watched as Lu Suyu cradled the infant prince, then savagely pinched his tiny neck. I saw Song Qingqing wail hoarsely, even kneeling before Lu Suyu, begging for mercy. A flicker of pity stirred within me, yet I felt no urge to intervene. This was retribution. Song Qingqing's face was etched with despair. She lunged forward, trying to tear into Lu Suyu, only to be pinned down on the bed by the matron beside Lu Suyu, just as I had been in my past life. The difference was, in my past life, No one came to my rescue. Today, however, someone could save her. Amidst the commotion, a squadron of imperial guards burst through the doors, followed by the emperor and consort Shu. Lu Suyu's face drained of color as she collapsed to the floor, with both witnesses and evidence confirming her attempt to harm the imperial heir. The emperor's wrath was unbridled. He ordered her immediate execution. Lu Wu and the crown prince were accomplices. One was immediately imprisoned. The other stripped of his title and confined to the prince's residence. General Lu was recalled to face punishment. In the brocade palace, Consort Shu looked at me and asked, "Song Qingqing isn't dead. Are you resentful?" I shook my head slightly. She might as well be dead now. Witnessing one's own child murdered is truly worse than death. I know this all too well. The consort smiled. It's not that I won't kill her, but I cannot do so these days. I have already instructed Howard to execute her once he ascends the throne. I froze. Why can't she be killed now? The moment the question left my lips, I suddenly recalled something. Are you worried she might be reborn? The noble consort nodded. The 4th day of the 3rd month falls in 2 days. In your past life, you were reborn during those very days. The noble consort seemed remarkably knowledgeable about rebirth. I looked at her hesitantly. How do you know how I was reborn? The noble consort rose. Follow me. I followed her to the lotus pond in the rear courtyard of the brocade palace. The moon hung high in the sky, and the area around the pond was utterly still. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off here. The noble consort smiled. Perhaps you've noticed too. I'm not from this era. I'm a time traveler. 16 years ago, on the 4th day of the 3rd month, I crossed over into this body right here, by this very lotus pond. Though the emperor forced me into the palace, I was also searching for my way home. I calculated the timing. My next journey through time would occur 16 years later, on the 4th day of the 3rd month. Your rebirth confirms this. Though different, time travel and rebirth are both intersections of 2 timelines. Recently, I've noticed the magnetic field in this area growing chaotic, which makes me believe my calculations were correct. Now I understand why Lady Shu was so overjoyed when I told her I reincarnated on the 4th day of the 3rd month. Had she found her way home? That's why she set her sights on the Lu family, clearing obstacles from the second prince's path to the throne. Consort Shu looked at me. I must complete one final matter. What matter? I asked. But Consort Shu did not answer me. 2 days later, under another full moon, Consort Shu and the emperor were boating on the lotus pond of Jinshou Palace. The second prince and I stood watch on the shore. The emperor was in high spirits, and Consort Shu's face was radiant with smiles. The second prince looked troubled, and I too felt uneasy. Today was the day Consort Shu was to return home. Why had she invited the emperor? Wasn't she the one who hated him most? An unstoppable thought flashed through my mind. Consort Shu intends to kill the emperor. I instinctively glanced at the second prince. His expression grew increasingly grim. Clearly, he had thought of it too. On the boat, the two were drinking wine and admiring the moon. Suddenly, the emperor's face paled. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and pointed at Consort Shu, shouting angrily, "You intend to kill your sovereign?" Consort Shu laughed heartily at this. The emperor immediately cried out for help. But there was no one else around except me and the second prince. The others had long been dismissed by the second prince and were waiting outside the courtyard. Seeing his cries for help were futile, the emperor quickly resorted to emotional pleas. "My beloved consort, all these years, I have loved you. Why can't you see my true heart? I can promise you, from now on, you will be the only one in the harem. I truly love you. All these years, have you truly never felt anything for me?" The noble consort burst into laughter. "Love you? How laughable! Why would I ever love a rapist?" The emperor's face flushed crimson with rage. He pointed at her, screaming, "You wretch! How dare you compare me to a rapist? You're nothing but a slut. I regret not disposing of you sooner. What's there to be so high and mighty about? You're just a defiled woman. Hearing this, Consort Shu burst into laughter again. You're worse than rapists. At least they own up to their deeds. You pretend everything's fine, truly shameless and vile. The emperor trembled with rage but said nothing. He leaped from the boat and swam toward the shore. Consort Shu followed closely, jumping in after him. The Consort Shu, unaffected by the poison, swam much faster than the emperor. She grabbed him at the shore and forced him underwater. Watching from the bank, my heart pounded in terror. I feared the Consort Shu might not kill the emperor, yet dreaded the noise alerting the guards outside. My eyes instinctively sought the second prince, only to find him looking away. After an unknown duration, the sounds of struggle in the water grew fainter. Then, one figure slowly climbed ashore. It was Her Majesty the Consort Shu. I hurried forward to support her. Her entire body went limp as she collapsed into my arms. Her face bore utter exhaustion, yet deep satisfaction. I've avenged myself. I've avenged myself. After all these years of humiliation, I've finally gotten my revenge. Suddenly, the air around us felt off. A strange wind began stirring from nowhere. Consort Shu seemed to sense something, her face lighting up with excitement. I'm going home. I felt her body in my arms grow limp, her entire being withering away. Panic seized me. Your Highness. Your Highness. How are you? With a faint, weak gesture, the consort beckoned to the second prince. He approached and knelt beside her. Howard, take good care of Lingyun. I'm leaving. The second prince bit his lip and nodded. I've taken Songxin as my adopted daughter. From now on, she is your sister. Lingyun is innocent. With her by Lingyun's side, I can rest assured. The consort suddenly mentioned me, and the second prince nodded again. I knew this was Consort Shu instructing the second prince to spare my life. After all, I had witnessed her regicide. Consort Shu smiled softly, whispering into my ear, I deceived Howard, telling him you could be reborn. You possess great destiny. Killing you might only lead to another rebirth. Better to live with purpose. Rest assured, you won't die. I hesitated, wanting to ask what would happen if the emperor were reborn. The noble consort seemed to read my thoughts. Time and space are tangled. Even if the emperor is reborn, he might not return to this place or this body. He'd never endure such a fall from grace. It might even kill him with rage. If he travels back to my era with me, I'll toy with him until he's finished. I'll kill him once, at least. After all these years of pent-up fury, I deserve my revenge. After this, you must care for Lingyun. I've failed her as a mother, but she has her brother and maternal grandfather. My parents, however, have only me as their daughter. They need me more. I nodded, tears welling uncontrollably in my eyes. Her voice grew fainter and fainter. The air around us seemed to freeze in silence, and I could barely breathe. I'm so tired. Tired of time travel. Tired of this era. I never want to time travel again. Mom. I miss you so much. Mom. I crave braised pork belly, less sugar. I'm dieting. The consort finally closed her eyes, yet a smile lingered on her lips. Postscript. In the 17th year of the Great Liang Dynasty, the emperor and consort Shu were assassinated during a nighttime outing. Both meeting their end, the second prince ascended the throne. Princess Lingyun was elevated to Princess of Ningguo, granted fiefdom and stipends. Consort Shu's maid, Songxin, who shielded the second prince during the assassination, was enfeoffed as Princess of Rongnan County and accompanied the princess to her fief. The end.